How's your heart today? Some loneliness doesn't always look lonely from the outside. Sometimes it looks like a clean kitchen, a full calendar, a polite smile at work, or a quiet ride home with groceries on your lap. Tonight is for the softer kind of loneliness, the kind that lives inside ordinary life and keeps going, even while everything still looks functional. These letters are for the emptiness that can grow in routines, in adulthood, and in love. If your life has looked normal lately, but your heart has felt a little unheld, maybe one of these letters will sound familiar. I never told you that, I already ate, was sometimes another way of saying, I don't want you to hear how quiet my apartment is. That sentence belongs to my mother, though I never actually sent it to her. When I first moved out, I told everyone I was thrilled about living alone. And I was, at least in the ways adults are supposed to be. I liked choosing my own groceries, leaving a book open on the table, playing music without explanation, and coming home to a place that answered only to me. Independence looked good in conversation. It sounded healthy, ambitious, and self-respecting. It made me feel like I had finally become the person I had spent years trying to be. What I didn't expect was how quickly freedom and loneliness would start borrowing each other's clothes. At home, silence had always contained other people. A cupboard shutting. My father clearing his throat in the living room. My mother rinsing fruit. The television a little too loud in the wrong room. Even when nobody was speaking, life still sounded shared. In my apartment, silence was a full occupation. It sat with me while I ate. It watched me fold laundry. It followed me from the front door to the sink to the bed like a patient thing made entirely of routine. My mother called most evenings around 7:30. That had always been dinner time at home, and apparently distance was not enough to change her inner clock. She would ask the same small questions. Did I get home? Had I eaten? Was work tiring me out? Did I need anything from home this weekend? Usually I answered in the same bright, efficient voice. Yeah, I ate. Just a normal day. I'm fine. No, don't bring anything. What I almost never told her was that half the time I was standing at the sink eating crackers or leftover noodles directly from the pot while the room echoed around me in a way that made me feel briefly foolish for having wanted so much space. The loneliest nights were never the dramatic ones. Not birthdays. Not holidays. Those at least announced themselves. The hardest nights were Tuesdays. Rainy Thursdays. The kind of evening where the only thing wrong was that nobody was in the next room making ordinary noise. Nobody knew the shape of my day unless I translated it first. Nobody said, sit down, eat while it's hot, as if my body belonged to a rhythm larger than my own mood. One night I came home late from work, too tired to cook, too restless to order food, and too embarrassed by my own feelings to name them properly even to myself. I stood in front of the refrigerator for a long time, as if opening and closing the door might somehow reveal a better arrangement for my life. Then my phone rang. It was my mother. I answered in the lightest voice I could manage. She asked if I had eaten. I said yes without thinking. She paused for just a second and then said, okay. I made too much soup again, so I'll freeze some. That sentence undid me more than concern would have. Because in my family, I made too much soup has never really meant what it says. It means there is still a place for you, in the practical imagination of this house. It means I am still cooking with your name somewhere in the measurements. It means I know you are trying to live as if you need less than you do, and I am trying not to embarrass you by calling it out directly. I sat on the kitchen floor after that call and cried in the most unremarkable way possible, not dramatically, not beautifully, just the tired crying of someone who had spent too many evenings being her own witness. I think that was the moment I understood something I wish more adults said out loud. Loneliness is not always a sign that your life is wrong. Sometimes it is simply the cost of building a life no one else knows from the inside yet. What I never told my mother was that her calls were not interruptions. They were part of the architecture of my evenings. A small proof that somewhere, someone still expected me to exist at dinner time. I never told her that when I said, I already ate, I was often protecting both of us from a truth that felt too minor to confess and too heavy to carry elegantly. I also never said that the quiet eventually changed. I learned how to cook a few real meals. I started setting the table even for one. I let friends come over without apologizing for the size of the space. The loneliness did not vanish, but it softened once I stopped treating it like a personal failure. Now, when my mother calls and asks if I've eaten, I try to answer more honestly. Sometimes home keeps loving us through the questions we once thought were too small to matter. The next letter is for a different kind of loneliness, the one that can happen in the middle of people, where everything looks connected and still feels strangely private. I never told anyone that the loneliest part of my week was lunch. You would think it would be nighttime, or Sundays, or the walk back from the station after dark. But it was lunch, specifically the office lunch table where everyone was technically friendly and nobody knew anything real. I had a job, coworkers, a calendar full enough to feel adult, and 2 group chats that never fully slept. From the outside, my life had all the evidence of company. I replied to messages. I laughed at jokes. I attended birthdays, farewell cakes, and one too many after-work drinks where everyone said they were exhausted, in a joking tone meant to keep it from becoming a confession. If loneliness had a dress code, I thought it was supposed to look more obvious than this. But every day around noon, I would sit with the same group in the same break area and feel a strange kind of disappearance happen inside me. No one was unkind. That's what made it harder to explain. We talked about deadlines, streaming shows, meal prep, apartment prices, weather, and whether the printer on the 3rd floor had finally been fixed. I could join any conversation. I had timing, opinions, decent stories, and the social instincts to seem fine. The problem was that none of it ever traveled beneath the surface. Every interaction felt lightly coded, as if all of us had silently agreed that adulthood meant being available, without being truly knowable. There was one coworker in particular, Maya, who was probably the closest thing I had to a real friend there. We took the same train sometimes. She remembered that I hated raisins and baked things. Once, when I was sick, she left tea on my desk without making it a scene. I liked her. I think she liked me too. But even with her, I found myself editing. I could say, I'm tired, but not. I've started dreading going home to my own thoughts. Then one Thursday I got unexpectedly good news. A small promotion, not life-changing, but enough that I should have felt proud. Everyone in the office congratulated me. People smiled, clapped, asked if I was treating myself to dinner, and told me it was well-deserved. Maya hugged me. My manager said something encouraging. My phone buzzed with polite reactions in the work chat. And in the middle of all that, I felt lonely so suddenly, it almost embarrassed me. Because I realized there was no one I wanted to tell in the first raw second of joy. No one I could text without arranging the story first. No one I could call who already knew how hard that month had been, how close I'd come to feeling invisible, or why this small promotion landed in a much deeper place than my title suggested. I went to the bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror like maybe I could explain it there. It wasn't that I had no people at all. It was that I had drifted into a version of life full of interaction and low on witness. That kind of loneliness is difficult because it makes you question yourself. Are you being ungrateful? Too private? Too particular? Do you expect too much depth from ordinary life? Or have you simply gone too long without being genuinely accompanied? That evening, on the way home, I almost texted an old friend I hadn't spoken to properly in months. I typed, "I got promoted today. I wish you were still the kind of person I could tell first." Then I deleted it, because adulthood has its own small manners of self-protection. Instead, I bought myself noodles, went home, and ate them at the table instead of over the sink. I let the good news sit there with me, awkward and strangely unsheltered. Then I did something tiny that turned out to matter. I wrote down the whole day in my notes app. Not the resume version, the real version. How the office smelled after rain. How proud I felt for 5 seconds, and then how empty. How I wanted witness more than applause. I think that was the beginning of a change. Not a cure, just a shift. I started understanding that loneliness in adult life is often less about the number of people around you and more about whether your inner life has somewhere to land. I began reaching out more specifically. A few people knew what to do with that honesty. That was enough to start rebuilding. What I never told the people at that lunch table is that they were not failing me. They were simply occupying the places available to them. The real change had to begin with me deciding that being well-liked was not the same thing as being known. The truth I carry now is that a crowded life can still have empty rooms in it. And some of the loneliest people you know are the ones who have become excellent at answering, smiling, and making sure nobody notices the difference. Sometimes quiet loneliness is not a lack of company. It is a lack of being met. The last letter is for the kind of loneliness that arrives beside love, inside a life that still functions, where nothing is broken enough to explain the ache clearly. I never told you that I started feeling lonely while we were still making coffee for each other in the morning. That sentence still feels unfair. You were not cruel. You were not absent in any obvious way. We still shared groceries, reminders, and the usual practical tenderness of two people who had spent enough time together to know each other's habits by heart. From the outside, we looked stable. That was part of the problem. When love becomes mostly functional, loneliness has nowhere obvious to point. We still lived together. We still had dinner most nights. We still took turns remembering the things that made daily life move more smoothly. Milk, laundry, dentist appointment, bills. You would bring home the bread I liked without asking. I would wash your favorite mug by hand because the dishwasher chipped the rim. If anyone had asked whether we cared for each other, the answer would have been yes. Completely yes. But somewhere along the way, care and closeness stopped being the same thing. I noticed it first in conversation. We still exchanged information, but less and less of ourselves. How was work? Still happened. What did it feel like? Mostly didn't. We updated each other. We coordinated. We solved. We passed each other the salt, the grocery list, the train app, the umbrella by the door. But fewer real things crossed between us. One night we were eating soup in near total silence, not hostile silence, just tired silence, when I realized I felt lonelier sitting across from you than I had felt alone in months. Not because you were doing anything wrong, because I could remember what it had once felt like when you were not only near me, but emotionally available to me. I should have said something then. Not a grand accusation. Not, we're falling apart. Just something modest and true like, I miss feeling reached by you. But I didn't, because I was afraid of being unfair. Afraid that naming the loneliness would sound like ingratitude toward all the practical love still standing there. Afraid that once I admitted the distance, I would not be able to pretend we still had time to drift back toward each other naturally. So I stayed quiet, and the quiet became a habit. That is one of the more frightening things about ordinary loneliness. It can become routine before it becomes visible. You adapt. You stop trying certain doors. You rely more on your own interior furniture. You become impressive in all the ways no one asked you to be. Then one day something small happens, a hard day at work, a family scare, a good piece of news, and you realize you no longer know how to bring your full self to the person closest to you. When we eventually talked, it was gentle and devastating in exactly the way mature endings often are. No villain. No courtroom. Just two tired people admitting that affection had survived longer than emotional access. I remember crying not because I was shocked, but because I wasn't. That was the most painful part. The loneliness had been real for so long that the truth felt less like a revelation and more like a name tag pinned onto an ache that had already moved in. What I never said, not even then, was that the hardest part wasn't losing the relationship itself. It was realizing how long I had been lonely inside something I still wanted to honor. I wish I had said that practical tenderness matters, but it can't carry the whole structure forever. I wish I had said that being cared for is not always the same thing as being emotionally accompanied. Now, with more distance, I understand something kinder. Loneliness in love is not always proof that no one cared. Sometimes it is proof that two people kept trying to maintain the visible parts of a life after the invisible parts began to thin. That does not make the ache smaller, but it does make it less cruel. The sentence I carry now is this: I was not asking for more spectacle. I was asking for more aliveness between us, and I didn't know how to say it before the room got too quiet. Some of the deepest loneliness in ordinary life happens in places that still look warm. If these letters found you tonight, maybe it's because loneliness does not always arrive with emptiness. Sometimes it arrives through repetition, politeness, responsibility, and all the quiet ways a life can keep working while the heart goes underaccompanied. That does not mean you are broken. Sometimes it only means you need a truer place to land. Even quiet loneliness deserves honest language, and sometimes naming it is the first small light back toward yourself.